This is at least my story, okay, or the story that I am able to pick it from somewhere else, and you may take that into consideration and ignore it if you wish. The light is at least a source of illumination. Okay? And as a source of illumination, it produces clarity. Now those words are found all over the reports from the near-death experience. Nevertheless, it's part of a larger construct here. What's another name for illumination when you think about it spiritually? Or anyway, enlightenment. So there is so that source of illumination produces enlightenment. Another word is knowledge. And people who come back have visions of knowledge so profound that they're able to look to the end of the universe. One of the persons who came back said, "I saw the end of the Big Bang." He was very anxious to get to see everything there was to know about the universe, and so he got on the river of life, and that river carried him off through galaxies and into the edge of the universe, and there, sure enough, was this end of it all, the end of the Big Bang. And then what? What's beyond the Big Bang? Another universe. There is other universes yet being created beyond that, according to him. Anyway, that's the kind of enlightenment that you should maybe expect to find when you get there. But there is a spiritual explanation. Okay. There is a spiritual explanation. There is something else that corresponds to. Spiritually, it represents truth. So the being of light turns in the end to be the truth of God. How else does light express itself? Light equals warmth, comfort. What? Okay. Warmth, comfort, and spiritually representing good. Now you can see the need for this. Suppose there are things which are absolutely true and really awful for you, okay? But if you have both truth and good turns out to be, when it's expressed spiritually, also love. So now you have both truth and love, and those words are all over the people who return. And there's a word that comes with this that I need to express, and that is pure. These things are pure truth and love, and they happen so frequently that I really don't know what pure love or pure truth is, except that it seems to be all over this place. Okay. Oh, got ahead of myself a little bit. It equals love when combined with truth, when those two things go together. And truth becomes wisdom when it is combined with love.
So these are the common interpretations.
These are the common interpretations, and they're all over the reports that they give. So putting them together in this way happens to be some theologian's version of why it is that the light has those two characteristics, and how are these other things are derived from it.
Hal, may I interject?
Yes.
I'm reading a book right now by Karen Armstrong, who's written a book called The Case for God. And part of her thinking and what she's wanting to express is that we basically experience more of the eternal in the old days, in the early days of the church, because we were much more involved with the ritual of worship and the sharing of bread and the physically figuring out ways that we can experience love within the community, and by that community there was much more emphasis on this concept of the communion of saints. And people back in those days had much more of a concept that their ancestors were communing with them. And this was some of the things that I think, as we've moved from back in the early days of Christianity to the present day, where everything is head knowledge, what the Old Testament or the New Testament people, Thomas Aquinas and Anselm and some of the other early theologians within the Christian churches, saying that it's more heart knowledge, and because it's heart knowledge, we can draw on our ancestors and this communion of saints.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody else wants to expound on this idea that we celebrate the All Saints Day only one day a year. Why is that? I don't know, but maybe we should celebrate it more often.
Well, there is an awareness, I think, of something that's happening, in part because of this resuscitation phenomenon, and it's going to become more obvious because more and more people are going to be resuscitated and be able to report these kinds of conclusions. If you open up a conversation with your friends and relatives, you're going to discover that they will tell you things too that they hadn't told anybody else. No, but the reports are that, this being had love and so on. I never wanted to leave the presence of this person. Okay, that's pretty clear. I never wanted to leave the presence of this particular source of illumination.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. There's a person, or is it a source of illumination and enlightenment, or?
This being had a sense of humor. This being had his conversation in which he was kidding me into going back. This being told, or in some cases, we had a kind of a confrontation. Now, what kind of a response is that?
Okay, so that being said, Moses has his burning bush, and whatever these instances littered throughout all through the Bible. Are they coming back and saying, I met God, or I met Jesus, or are they saying I met an angel, or
a lot of them
what do they say?
identify it. If it's not Jesus or the Master, it's a great angel, and angels or beings, can be personal. I wasn't there. I think that's my.
Well, and I think that gets with the difficulty of meshing these two things together. And keep talking about heart knowledge versus head knowledge. Heart knowledge is very tough to transmit to anybody else, and I do think that Christianity sometimes can tend to be too. We can make it too much head knowledge and not about the Spirit coming into you. But there is head knowledge too that informs this stuff too. Because there are times even in these commonalities it seems like a Rorschach test of what, you know, kind of what you're talking about, the expectation of what you would see in a near-death experience, how much does that influence it? And then you're into deep psychology and all these other things. So there's that this is valuable to a point, but we are several steps removed. Like, and even like you're saying, you know, like, these aren't descriptions of a light; these are descriptions of an interpretation of a light, or even the being. You know, that the light is a being. Well, that's an interpretation too. So I just, you know, the further we get, the more we're building on. The more we're building up on this, we have to make sure it's not a house of cards. If the foundation is not there, the foundation is
I
not.
won't be able to be here next week. I'll just tell you briefly a story about the light. I had a parishioner who had, a young man who had severe pneumonia and was in the hospital. And I got a call from his doctor if I would come to the hospital because his wife was pregnant and he didn't want her present with him because he was so out of control. And I thought, this is strange. This is one of the most docile men I ever met. And so I went to the hospital. This was the middle of the night. And he's laying in bed, repeating over and over again, look into the light. Look into the light. And the doctor tells me that the man is crazy. He's lost it and he's over the edge. And I said, I don't know if he is. I never experienced him that way. And I sat with him at the bedside and I just calmed him down a little bit and said, well, what's going on here? What's the light? He just kept saying, look into the light. Do you see the light? I see the light. Look into the light. And he was not out of control at all. And the doctor motioned me out of the room and said, well, what do you make of all this? And I said, I'm not sure, but I said, I don't think he's psychologically going over the edge here. He's near death in some way. And just then, he took the bed, he was strapped in bed, and he took the bed and walked with the bed till the door stopped him, screaming, I'm in the light, I'm in the light. Well, they gave him a big shot, knocked him out, and took him to the psyche at another hospital. And, you know, later he talked to me about that, and he said, I don't know what happened to me.
Did he remember it at all?
He remembered my being there, and he remembered chasing the light. But you see, he didn't go very deep into the near-death experience because it was interrupted in a sense.
Yeah.
He was knocked out, and, you know, then he was taken in an ambulance where they had resuscitation available to them and so forth. And he came home and lived happily ever after, you know. I mean, that was just an experience that he had.
Did that affect his life afterwards? Are you aware?
I would say that he was a better husband and father, yes.
Okay.
And I think that he had much more respect for his own mother, which was quite tense before that.
To continue, what else do we know? We know that there is at some point, a life review. This life review occurs, I guess they place it here after the light, because when it occurs in the presence of the light that they met up there in heaven. This is, and if they perceive this as Jesus Christ, then it is Christ himself who accompanies the person in looking at their past lifetime. And when that lifetime occurs in a remarkable way. Sometimes it takes, by earthly time, only seconds. Sometimes it seems to take a very long time, And the individual who's going through this review has an opportunity to look at everything they ever did, every thought they ever made in the course of their lifetime. This is, of course, in making that lifetime review, it is a time of, well, that was nice. I didn't even know I did something nice to that person. Or it is sometimes, why did I do that? And they suffer for having seen what they had accomplished, what they failed to do or in fact did. Well, that creates this is what? This is a kind of a judgment. And I'm not here to invent a new theology, but maybe the judgment being spoke of is the judgment being made by the individual about themselves.
Self-judgment rather than God's judgment.
Well, Jesus is there, remember?
Well, I mean, they say Jesus is
Yes, and the other truth is, this is only the beginning of an exposure to the spiritual life. Now, I've been reading enough other things to understand that there is a long process of this individual becoming a full-fledged member of heaven and the spiritual world. And so I have some idea that this is part of the judgment that takes place. And Jesus and God's own judgment about this is perhaps yet to come. Jesus has said, it is said that he judges, and so I think I follow that. Maybe this is only a part of it.